Hey, this is Danielle Gardner. If you are a quadrite and have your own business, then I think you'll really love this conversation I had with Jan Stiewe. He is a 5-1 mental projector, and he also does human design chart readings. And I met Jan a few years back on a workation in Thailand, and that's where he first found out about human design. From our conversations we had, and now he's gone on to study it, and he's got some really great perspectives. So enjoy the conversation, and if you have any questions for us, let us know in the comments. Enjoy. All right. So Jan, I have been more and more drawn to exploring, investigating what it means to be a quadrite in business. And in the back of my mind, I knew that you're a quadrite because I'd seen that, well, it was on Instagram, right? But we already knew each other, of course. So as I started to sort of channel more energy into like, yeah, I want to have some conversations about this, I thought it would be great to talk to you. And then you said that you were, you know, in the midst of your first quadrite experiment. And I thought, how perfect. Let's have a chat about this. So we're going to get into your experiment. I've got some questions or things that I'd like your perspective on in relation to being a quadrite. But before we get into all of that, let's just sort of touch on, in a superficial way, what is a quadrite, and then we'll go a bit deeper through our conversation. Over to you.
Thanks for the invitation, first of all. I'm very, very happy to talk about it because it's one of my favorite topics. And it makes a difference for every type, because every type technically can be a quadrite. And I have the feeling it's getting more and more. People have been born with being more right-minded also. Mm-hmm. And we also go in a collective era where it's much more about that. So technically, quadrite means there are 4 arrows or letters above your or beside your body graph, which point in one direction, either left or right. And it can be very different. There are 16 types of these arrow combinations, from being all left to all right, which means quadrite. And basically, it's kind of an evolution history behind it, because in history, people needed to survive mainly. So this is being all left, very strategic, very active, very focused on what is important now, and need to plan ahead a little bit to survive. Mm-hmm. This is a quality also about being a quad left, being very intelligent about dealing with life. Mm-hmm. And moving further to the right, the more arrows to the right or letters to the right you get, the more passive, the more aware of everything, all frequencies you get, and the less strategic you are, the less it's about survival. And this you can see in evolution. Mm-hmm. We are way past survival in average in Western countries, and it's more about being than doing. Which is the hard part probably when we get to it. But this is kind of what it means to be either left or right. And one more thing to this in human design, Ra said that being quadrite is much different to being like 3 rights and 1 left. It's kind of a new type, which he hadn't had the time, unfortunately, because he passed away early to really define it. But he said it's kind of a new type, like a 5th type in human design, because it's so different. Yeah. And it's much more closer to the new humans who will be living from 2027. Yeah.
I love that overview. That was amazing. Thank you. So let's hear a bit about your experiment with being a quadrite. Like, what does that look like? I made a note here that you said it's been both magical and difficult. So I'd love to hear a bit about this experiment and how it started, and what does it look like? What does this experiment look like?
First of all, I have to say and mention here that I'm only here talking about this because of you. Yeah. It's 5 years ago where you introduced me to human design, And I love to remember that our conversation on Koh Samui in Thailand, where you said, hey, yeah, you should check out human design. And I was like, yeah, another system, whatever.
You
Okay,
did.
but interesting.
You did, yeah.
And now I'm here doing it as a business, and and doing also for the first time, like I mentioned, a real quadrite experiment, because it's one thing to know the type. And I'm a mental projector, so I have only 2 of 9 centers defined, only my head, only my ajna, or my mind, and my throat. So I'm a thinker and a talker. I'm organizing thoughts. I can tell stories. Everything else is open. I'm aware. I'm open to everything, which makes it even more open being a quadrite. So I'm open to all the frequencies, to everything which is around me, which has obviously been all the time in my life, which is why I have been so tired and so overwhelmed all my life, which makes it very difficult. But this is kind of the short explanation of the difficulty about it, to be aware 360 degrees around you all the time. I explained it later in the day when I didn't know about human design. I have this peripheral view of everything. I see, although I don't look in a direction, I see everything and I get everything. And I always sense that about me. And at the same time, being magical is, when I once read something about physics, quantum physics or anything, I can talk to a physician about it. I can have a deep talk about quantum theory, about string theory, about CERN, about, I know so much then when I talk to a person who is of quality, of integrity, of having good questions, having good deep knowledge too. And it just comes out. And I don't even know from where. And this is being a quadrite. It's like a well, which is it's so deep you can't even imagine. There's everything inside which you encounter and where you go and with whom you talk and where you are, which doesn't make a difference between good or bad. It doesn't. If it's trash, you are trash. And if it's if it's good, if it's quality, if it's loving, if it's caring, it's what you know and are. And it depends at the same time in the end who asks you then and who uses this well, because it's there to be used. It's there. Otherwise, when I'm alone, I can hardly access it. So this explains probably already this paradox between it's so magical. I don't even know how this wisdom, where it comes from and how I could, organize. I couldn't have planned a lot of conversations and things I did. And at the same time, you can't strategically plan it, obviously. You can use it your own way, and you have to really be cautious and aware who you give it to, which sounds arrogant almost or anything, but it's just, this is what defines you then. And especially me being so open, it defines me even more. So it really amplifies my design anyway, which is anyway open and really dependent on the other.
So a couple of things came to mind as you were sharing that. The first one was, this experience I can relate to of basically noticing everything, being aware of everything. What I have found is, because that's been my natural state, I think I don't think it's unusual. I didn't think it's unusual. I just thought, when something comes naturally to you, you think that's everyone's experience. And I'm guessing you probably found that as well. Like you didn't maybe, when things come natural, they just seem natural. And the other thing was, I'm wondering whether before you came across this understanding of quadrite, would you have been thinking in terms of you're a highly sensitive person at all?
Yes, of course. I mean, only through my design, it's already, I'm so sensitive to my environment because I'm all open from from here.
Yeah.
So I always had to deal with it, and I did it through people pleasing and through being liked and all this stuff, and being tired and being not feeling right here and feeling alienated, like. So but it's, you know, it's only a label for me because it has so much facets to be hypersensitive. So but I think it's kind of the definition of being hypersensitive, to be quite right, because you're taking it all in, which is amazing, because when you study, you just have to go to the lecture and be there. You don't even have to take notes or anything, and it all comes in. And if somebody asks you of quality again, it just comes out again. It's so magical. But like I explained, when there's trash, when you watch trash TV or trash talk or trash magazines or a job which you don't like and where you're not recognized, even if a generator or not, or a projector, it's what you defines you, which is of course highly sensitive. So the environment for me especially as a mental projector, quite right, is so key, and I have to empty myself all the time to just, you know, feel who I really could be. Otherwise, I'm really dependent, and in a way codependent, not interdependent, on my surroundings, which doesn't feel good at all. So it's very sensitive. Yes.
And this experience of being a well as a quadrite is sort of a well that people dip into. I think that's the term. I think I've really noticed this myself in, like as an example, if I have a live class that I'm delivering, I'll generally deliver it twice, either on the same day to different time zones, or you know, day apart. And a few times I've had this experience where the first call was great, you know, and I would almost expect, if it's the first time I'm delivering something, maybe the first call's a little bit clunky, you know, but I've walked away from the first call going, I aced that. That was freaking cool. And then I've done the next one later on, and I've walked away going, that was shit, you know, and trying to work out what went wrong here, you know. And really, when I read that information about who's dipping into the pool, I guess what I'm thinking, it depended on who the pool was. Like, no, I'm the pool. Who was dipping into the pool? Yeah.
Which is so different being left, because then you just do it, and you have a little more secure about what is coming back, because you more, you know. You more give, and being focused and strategic so much that you don't take it all in, which is in front of you, and then you're more safer. But we are defined by who listens and who is really there. You know, is there a person, when I'm doing readings, does this person really want to take it in and is really open and wants to look at the truth, or is it just consuming? Is it just is he not really there? I can't be good then. I just can't. And I feel it, and I can't override it. Of course I can always override it with my mind, but it doesn't make sense. And you, like you explained, it was such a perfect example. Thank you for that. You can't do anything about it. And you ask yourself, dependent, of course, of your perspective or anything which you're designed, what went wrong here? I should be better next time, or whatever. It can't be. It's such a difference, but it depends so much from the other side, from the person who are participating, and how, in which energy they are.
So I think that's like a really handy thing for quadrites to know, to sort of let themselves off the hook in those times where it just felt like, that was shit. Like, you know, it's not you, it's them, sort of thing, in a way, you know, like.
Without guilt, without who's wrong or right.
Judgment, or
just about where can you connect, which is, you know, much more important even for you. One question also, I think, is or was, what does it mean for a generator or any type? It's, you know, it's about curating in a way, not in a selective racist way or anything. It's about where does it flow, because quad right is all about flow. It's about containing a flow. The only strategy you should have is to, observe or be aware of if there is flow or if it's stuck. And if you're strategic, you just pick another strategy or another focus or nothing or another whatever. But if you are quad right, you have to more feel into it and feel if you can make a connection with somebody. So one way would be to interview the people before, or to make something that you ask questions before and see how they answer. And if it feels right, if you have them connected, if they really already looking forward and it's time, or if they are struggling or anything. And then you have to be very careful, because one person already can change the whole energy in the room. You have probably experienced much more than me, and I'm very curious also how you handle it. Have been handled.
So honestly, I just feel like I'm super, super sensitive to that kind of thing. And I can definitely.
How does it show?
Yeah. I've got an example, right? Fairly recent one. So someone booked a particular session with me that I don't advertise, and there's only one way they could really find out about it, and that's through another coach, right? I ask a couple of questions, like in terms of, what do you want to focus on in this session or whatever. And I read it and I felt something immediately, like unpleasant, right? And I've changed even so much in the last 6 weeks or so since this happened. My immediate thought was, it's all right, Danny, rise to the challenge. You just got a little bit of, just rise to it. It's okay. So I talked myself into, this is going to be okay, right? It wasn't okay, right? It was really, really shit. 25 minutes into the session, this person was saying, look, I mean, it was such a terrible experience for me, but she said, and her, obviously, she was like, I would like to end this meeting and I would like to ask for a refund.
Wow. Yeah,
Never had that happen to me, ever. And it was the most unpleasant 25 minutes I've ever had with someone. And anyway, so that, and, looking back on that, I'm like, what happened here? And it's like, well, I know, I knew it. I knew it back there. I talked myself into it. I was, in fact, going against everything, my sacral, my everything, right? And so one of the things that I've done now, because I was just with the one-on-one work, it's just, I either love it because I love that person, or I just hate it, So I've changed my process now. If you want one-on-one with me, you've got to fill out some, you've got a little application. And honestly, I've had a few people fill it out and I've read it, and it felt so good to be working in that way, because I could read it and I can just pick up, they're a yes or they're a no, So for me, a lot of it is about just trust that original thing, for goodness sake,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for you, it's a little bit comparable to your gut response, to your sacral response, because you can override it too. You can with your head, with your mind, because of the money, because of, push through, Danny, don't try something new, or like going to a party you don't want to go, but it can be good. It can be a good evening. Give it a chance, 50-50, whatever. But your gut already knows, and your senses, they already feel it, that it's not worth it, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for anybody. It's just, kind of a waste of time. It's only, it's so precious to have had this experience, especially when it's so hurtful. And I can so imagine, I feel it. Because you then definitely know, I won't do this again like this, because it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. You need that to really do it. And I'm pushing through still too many times in life, not in particular in sessions. I only had one session kind of that way, where the person was always distracted by another person at work, which was always the topic, didn't matter what we talked about. It was always, yeah, but this guy at work, you know, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
all the time, again and
Mm.
again. And I couldn't get to her, which is
Yeah.
kind of my specialty, you know, with
Yeah.
being a mental projector and quite right. I take a walk through their bodies and minds. This is kind of the magical part also, where I sense so much that I'm kind of, sometimes if the person is really open, I can really pick out something of them, of their mind or their body, where I feel it and it's just happening. I don't do it like strategically or consciously. It's just happening, and they are then mirroring me back. How did you know that? It's just exactly the way I do it and what I feel. And this is what it goes then beyond human design. When you do just a session or a reading, it's more about this connection and your qualities and trusting the process. But it depends so much on how open the person is. And I don't do it like with a questionnaire. I only do it, I'm very strict about, give me your attention, your real intention. If they only say, yeah, it's job and private, and I'm thinking about changing something, I ask again in an email and say, please give me 1 or 2 sentences about this. Why the change? Why this? And from the sound of the words, then I already know if the person is really open.
Yeah.
And also how they write around it, like, you know, I'm really looking forward. Can we do it earlier? Whatever.
Yeah.
Not in an anxious way, in a really looking forward, I'm ready way.
Yeah.
And if it's not like that, I also, you know, try to avoid it then and try to think of something else or recommend to another person, because it can be different with another person. It's energy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, it's this kind of thing that I don't hear enough conversation about this in business. You know, how do you basically say no to a client, a potential client, you know? There was something I was going to mention there about, yeah, I think it's gone. So it might come back later. But what I do want to make sure I ask you about, or ask your perspective on, is this whole idea of strategy. So when in one of the readings I had with, well, you know, the gentleman, I recommended him to you at some point. I remember him going, "You're not here to be strategic. You're not here to be strategic." And he said that a few times during the session. And at that point, like, he called it a quadruple right. I had no idea what that meant. This is a few years ago. It was only when I listened to it a year later, and I'm like, oh, that's my quad right thing. Anyway, I left very confused because I was told, you're not here to focus, you're not here to be strategic. It was just a lot of what I'm not here to do. And this whole strategic thing has been really puzzling me. And so there's a few things to this, because I had to go, what does Ra mean, or what does the teachings mean by strategic? Because I think that could be interpreted in different ways, because after all, I've got my human design strategy, right? Which I'm meant to be following, right? So I was reading some things recently, and what Ra had said, and what I got out of it, if I had to exchange the word strategy with something else that was more understandable to me, it is conquering. That's what came up for me just through what he was saying. It was like, it's sort of like this, if I do this and this and this and this, I'll win there, you know, and this and this and this, and, you know, and I'm like, right, if I just have in my mind, it's about conquering, that helps me. So that, I guess that's the first thing. And I'll just give you a few other pieces, and then I'd be interested to hear how you see this all works together. I know it's individual as well. I know we can only talk in really general terms, but so there's that piece. The other bit that relates to the strategy is the planning piece, right? So in my case, again, this could be individual to my chart, but I'll just mention this. I have this process of planning with the seasons, right? So it's this really lovely, very basic way of going about things where I contemplate what is important for this coming season. What is it that I want to focus on? I'm not meant to focus, you know, I want to hear about that too. But when I work this out in a very kind of gentle way, it's really good to me. And even if that plan, moves a bit, there's a lot of spaciousness around this plan. It feels really good. So there's that part to it, which maybe is not strategic, but I would think some people would think that that's strategic to have a plan. I don't know. And then the third thing is focus, because I always remember hearing this, you're not meant to focus, you're not meant to focus. So I'm thinking, what does it look like to focus? What does it look like not to focus? I mean, when I sit down to work on something that is important to me, that is exciting to me, that's focus, and that feels good, And so when I hear you're not meant to focus, what conjures up for me is this idea of just floating through the days and the weeks with no real intention or purpose. And I've tried that, and it was a disaster. I ended up spending a lot of time on the couch scrolling Facebook and whatnot, and it felt gross, actually. So so over to you, Jan. What's your take on all of that? What is your perspective on those things that relate to being?
Oh, it's getting interesting. I mean, it's fun to talk about one topic, but we are not here to be one thing. We are not a projector. We are not a generator only. We are not a quadrite or whatever only. We are a quantum of everything which makes us who we are today. And also, like I said in our talk before, it's epigenetics, which is such a big part. And all our experiences and how we interpret things and where we are in life now, in which cycle are we, which stage of life are we. And it's so, you're a parent, I am now for 23 months, there's no way you can just live in the day and go with the flow. You have to have a structure for this child. It's different. Your own life is just so different when you really are a parent and want to be a father. So there is, all these things which have to be put in context there, I think. But what I mainly hear there is, and it's the individuality. I mean, when I look at your chart here, you have the 5, the rhythm in your sun gate. So I love that you work with the seasons. I have the 15, so I'm on the other side, which is also from the gene keys perspective, going with the ordinary, going with the Schumann resonance, going with the earth resonance, with the rhythm of life, with ups and downs. And if I rush too quickly from one thing to the other and think I have to be busy with that, because 15 in the end is the gate of extremes, it's the gate of loving everybody and everything. So I can get caught up in that. It doesn't feel good for me either. Like you said, it doesn't feel good for you to just relax and having no plan and just, see what comes. For you, it totally, for me, it makes sense. And you have this perspective of investigation also, which is also to make sure there is something which gives you security and intelligence. And, it's the first line. And so it's such a complex thing where you can never say you're not here to be strategic. You're not here to have a plan. In the if you look at it on a single perspective, yes, he's right. Quadrite means to be open all the time, because you are. If you ignore that, it doesn't feel good either. We had that example with your client.
Yeah.
It's one example of many you probably have had in your life. But at the same time, also for me, I'm a mental projector. So what is my biggest strength? Being being mental, being organized, giving structure, having structure. I'm almost neurotic about beauty and coherence and about technology. I'm like here sitting all day at my monitor and going with the angle and looking at this, sitting on the sofa and seeing if it's if it's right in the angle, because I love the beauty and the coherence of it, like the golden
Yeah.
cut of it, you know,
Yeah.
which
I
is
love that.
very kind of focused, strategic
Yeah. Right.
planning.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
it when the lights go on, when I come in my office, and go off when I leave.
Yeah.
It's, you know, all these things which makes, and there I come to my point, which makes it easier for me to be in the flow,
Yeah.
to have kind of a structure.
Yeah.
I'm a 5-1, so I also need structure. I need some foundation. And there it comes. It's not about that so much as it is about to be really open with and go with the flow. And I don't need a constant structure and goals and strategy and plans all the time to manage my life. Because if I do that, it's like with the transference in the motivation, I'm always caught up with that. You know, if I have hope motivation like you, and if we go into the other motivation, the guilt motivation, the transference of it, we are only busy with fixing things and being practical, and then we have no time left to be hopeful and to just be there, aware, and listen. So I think it's a big and huge and important part, yes, to be and stay open when you plan your seasons for other things. So plan your seasons, but then let go of it. It gives you a structure. This would be my, if you ask me, my thing, but respect the quantum of your design and your human being Danny and going through all these things. And all, like in the end, if it feels good, if it suits you, if it serves you, it's always right. And this is what it's human design is all about for me, to get back to this feeling of correctness, of integrity, of rightness, of, you know, strength, inner strength. And then you can leave all these critics and all these dogmatic people in the human design universe, where are a lot of people like that, because it's a technical binary logical system which attracts people like that. But we all know it's not black and white. It's the chaos, it's the it's the differentiation which this is all about. And it can be such a different experience for you being a generator quad right to a person which has almost the same design, totally different, and they all could live fine with it. This is what it's for me. It's awareness and consciousness about it, and not so much about the technical things. But it helps in the beginning to give it a real chance to be probably more strict and drastic about it, to give it a real chance, and then going back to this own feeling of correctness and rhythm and balance, which that means for you, and not how another person tells you to do, because they never know. They never know, you know. I don't know what it feels like to be a generator. You don't know how to feel. It feels like being a projector, but I also don't know how it feels like to be a splenic, an emotional projector, or, you know, a self-projected projector. I can learn. I can see with my girlfriend. She's a self-projected projector. She has 3 left arrows, so we are very different, and I see that. Although we are so similar in, we can hang around, we can just watch movies, we can just, you know, be there doing nothing, totally fine, no rush, nothing pushing us. But our lines here, of course, you know, our mind or everything, but we are very different there. So it's not so easy to just put it down like that. And I don't like it when people say it's so strict, but the knowledge is rare. I had that in my readings too. People said, yeah, you're quite right. What does it mean? Yeah. You know, you're not supposed to be strategic. So that some people don't get there to the variables, and they don't go deep there. But my experience is it's such an important part of your design. But in the end, like everything, you know, what makes you human. So I think it's really about this differentiation, how you make your experience and how it's different for you. What suits you, what helps you, what feels good.
Yeah. My final sort of question is, I'm wondering, let me see what I wrote here. Like how might, if at all, how might quad rights, I don't know, like lead the way or maybe do things differently in business? Because as a yeah, as a showing the way type thing as we move into this new era beyond 2027, where there'll be more and more rightness in the world. Do you have any thoughts? And I guess specifically to business, I'm thinking.
Mm. I mean, what does business mean now, or has been? The definition of making business. You
Mm,
see it like the whole system is very strategic.
mm,
It's all about numbers.
mm,
It's all about, you have to make a forecast to, even at least in Germany, you have to have a forecast to create a business. And it totally makes sense if you look at the global cycles of
mm,
planning,
mm,
growing, planning, working together. It has to work. Everything has to click and just work, so that everybody gets their avocado every day, or
mm,
and now we see a global development already, because it's already beginning, it has already beginning, of that these things don't work anymore. And they haven't worked in a lot of businesses for a long time, but it was just pressured through. So now we have the chance to look at our individual view on business, like you also do, slow business and slow marketing, business by design. It's more individual and not so much, here's a coaching program, you can sell it for 5,000 euros. If you only know your persona and your target group and your niche and your whatever, and then you put out everything on LinkedIn and Facebook, and like
yeah,
being in a club and asking
yeah,
10 women if they want to go to bed with you, and the 11th probably says yes, and
yeah.
you don't care so much about the individual person. So
Just the end
this is
result.
a chance to open up to differentiation, to open up to that there isn't a plan for everybody, that it suits, like with you, with your seasons. And for me, I love some strategic things. You can play with it. If they serve you, it's fine. Do a business plan if it serves you, or if you think you need the money, but question it and be open about other possibilities, because there are. So this is kind of how I view it, that people who are quite right have such a different view on the world and on the businesses, on the clients, on everything, which is really, taking at least us out of this is the way, this is the only way, and there are probably two more or whatever, but then you have to deal with this and that. So I think this is the magic behind it. If we listen more to quad rights, to get another perspective, it's like listening to reflectors, which is not happening either.
Yeah.
Probably, especially in business, which every business should have a reflector in a bigger business to guide them to really listen. But they have to, have to be open to listen to the critics of a reflector. And it's hard because it's the truth. It's like human design is telling you the truth. It's confronting you with the truth, which a lot of people are not ready for, which is also why it's going to be a tough transition. I think it's going to be very tough. But in the end, it's really about being much more open to the possibilities, what is between earth and sky, and not so much we just do it the way we did it for the last 100 years or even more. And I think this is kind of the responsibility, especially for quite right people, to be more open to themselves in the beginning, like this is the first step. Like the first step for projectors to be not generators. It's the first step. And this is a transition which will take some time. But I think this could be the magic, that much more things can happen if you don't plan everything, especially like it has been planned all the time before and somebody did it. And this is really the way now still. And a lot of people are making a lot of money with that, just teaching it, even doing it not for themselves, even not having a product really, not being productive. They just teach, you can make money with this program when you just follow these steps, especially in our business. And
Yeah.
it's
You
funny
can make
because
money
it's
by
really
teaching people how to make money. Yeah.
Yeah, because and it's not false, it's
Mm.
just because it's working, because people are not, they're so greedy or hopeless, or they just want the answer, the strategic focused answer, and they don't want to confront themselves with their individuality. And there it's again going beyond being quite right.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the quite right way, because we function that way, that we are aware, that we know it's not only the way.
Yeah.
And some people are very left. They only use this only way, and for them it works fine.
Yeah.
But it's the past. We have to acknowledge that it's the past. But it's interesting because there is no real answer to it.
Yeah, but just based on
How is your perspective on it?
Yeah, I guess what I hope you can hear me okay. I think it looks like the line, might be a bit funny. As what I've been thinking about as you're sharing that is I've been seeing my role more clearly in a way, because I'm out there going, like, pretty much every single thing that a regular business coach recommends, I do the opposite myself. So by me talking about that and sharing my little epiphany, as sharing how I think about things, that alone is very validating for people. But then when they come and work with me, I'm like, you do you, like, this is me. This is how I decided to do it. But I'm sharing with you my thinking around it so that you can come up with your way. And if you want to borrow that, and try it on, have a go, but this might spark something else for you. And it's I guess really my role is this validating people, validating what they already know has not been right in their body. Their body's been saying no to this, have been making themselves do it. And people can, in my circles at least, can go, well, if Danny can do it differently and she's doing all right, I can do it differently, and so I affect this little circle of influence I have. So it's
I love that. It's a perfect description, especially when you say, you compare it to other coaches who are all say, just do it my way, here's the step-by-step guide, and then you will be as successful as me or even more. But do it my way. If you don't, you're bad. Your wisdom of being quite right this was the key sentence for me. This already helps people to recognize themselves. And then they need to do it themselves anyway, because otherwise they will always have in the back of their mind, I did it the Donny way. And this doesn't feel good for an individual, even if it's the best way, and it's loving and caring and successful and everything you imagined of, but it's not your way. And everybody has to feel it and has to experience it for themselves, what it means to be themselves. And this is such a great example of you to be the guide there, especially also for the generators, to be aware of that and not being seduced by this old way, which is strong. And I can understand the longing for this clarity of just tell me the fuck what to do to run my business in particular, which is so satisfying in the end, isn't it? To guide somebody to this path and for the person. And this is kind of the new era, I think. And it doesn't even matter which type, but this is kind of where Quad Right plays a big role.
One of my favorite things that I shared on Instagram ever, I think, is I've made this little quote that I just came up with. It said, trust your ideas, especially when they're contrary to widespread business and marketing advice.
Wow.
And it's just, it's powerful.
This is awareness. Right? This is Quad Right.
It's like,
love that.
It's one of my most, I looked in the insights recently, and it's one of my most saved, it's a save, isn't it, in Instagram. So it meant that much to people that they wanted to refer back to it. And it's like, that is, like, even I knew when I was writing it, that's freaking powerful, man.
It is.
Essentially what we've been taught is to not trust ourselves.
I love that, because you need to think about it then.
Yeah.
And it's not about wrong or right.
Yeah.
It's just about what is your truth? What is
Yeah.
your way? How do you want to show up?
Yeah.
And here are some tools how you can do it differently, but only framing, you know, what you want to become and how do you want to participate in this society. And you have always the possibility to decide for the old way and to just consume and to just, you know, you can try it. I do it all the time, again and again. I fall into it. This is what is difficult about for me, because I feel the world still is that way. And I have a hard time to connect to it without, you know, feeling it's effortless and it's easy and it's good. But if I really, like, you know, in the beginning, it's so magical if I do it, like with your quote. It's so magical. Suddenly something is moving. Some people are, wow, this is different. Even so easy and kind of obvious. But nobody talks about it. Like nobody talks about quite right. Like nobody talks about variables in human design. But it's such a different thing if you are left or right. It's so different. And it's even independent from your design.
And that makes me think that really there's such an opportunity for quadrites who are experiencing the world differently, and finding their way, you know, back to themselves, to use their voice, to use their message, to share their perspectives on things. There's such an opportunity because right now those perspectives are new and contrary, so they're interesting, you know. Whereas in the future, it'll be like, it won't be new anymore. And it'll be great, but like there's such an opportunity now to go share how you're seeing it. So
also then working with transition, you know, because it's going to be probably tough if we believe in human design, what they predict. Also the children which will be born will be so different. So there needs to be much more acceptance and much more caringness and openness to these new people. It's already, you know, people from the old way and older people don't get the new children who were born with the internet, with everything and being more right already, who just do it more their way. It's just not, it doesn't get into their system because they are so socialized, so conditioned by the old paradigms. And these people don't even care about it anymore sometimes, which, you know, it makes a deep gap there and it's getting much bigger. So it's one other responsibility from us, I think, to close that gap a little bit, at least try in our way, to make this transition not so tough and not so hard for both sides, you know. But we will see.
So let's wind up. We could probably keep talking for hours, I reckon. But before we do wind up, I just want to hear a bit about what you're offering. I kind of have a vague idea, but you're doing human design readings, and are they combined with gene key readings? Like, tell us what, for anyone who's listening, what are you doing?
Yeah, although this is a conversation in English, I only have for now a German website, but I also do readings in English. So no hesitation there if somebody feels drawn to me there. But I do human design readings with a special software, special in the term of that gene keys already are being influenced there in this software. This is a couple from Austria who built a really big and deep software. It's called 64keys.com, also in English, based on their experiences with the classical international human design way. They also learned with Ra. They did movies with him. And they also learned with Richard Rudd from the Gene Keys, who also did kind of a spin-off from human design. And they integrated some of the gene key methods, the sequences like the Pearl sequence and the, you know, all that stuff into their system. And I really love it because the language also is much more contemporary, much easier, much more relatable. And this is where this software I use for my human design readings. And furthermore, I'm just in the middle of releasing my own body graph where you can calculate your chart on my website.
Cool.
And also calculated for others, but it will be only in German in the beginning. So yeah, and then planning like basic courses about human designs and some beautiful PDFs about it, especially also for children.
Yeah.
Because I'm a father now, and it's been on my mind for a long time. It's made for children, human design in the end, because they're fresh and new and not conditioned. And I think it's so precious for parents to have like a little manual for their not determined, very caring and lovingly some of these things. But I'm more or less in the beginning, although I've been 5 years in the program, in the experiments. I'm in the beginning of my business there, which is exciting to have this talk, because I'm really trying to do it as a mental projector, quad right, to build it. But I'm very conditioned to do it as a quad left manifesting generator, rush, strategic, boom, boom, boom. So I've been trying it and it's working all right. But for now, it's only readings, which is not,
So are you doing the readings like this on like Zoom, or is it a reading that you do and then send? Because I think you were doing an audio something.
I also offer audio now, where like a 1 hour audio where I record something now. But mainly I like to connect, because I'm a mental projector. It's the most you get out of a one-on-one. Being quite right, it comes out, and it's kind of magical sometimes in the sessions. It's much easier for me also than recording it by myself. I have to admit, but it's a good alternative for some people who don't want to spend the money or want it more indirect and are more audio oriented and can learn more from it. So yeah, this is another possibility.
So I'll provide a link to your website under this video. And I assume even if it is
about the Instagram would be much easier, because the website is in German and it's also German names. So Instagram would be easier. You can just DM me and then we can find something out.
Cool.
But thank you.
So what else? I think that's it. I guess if you're watching this and you have any questions about anything that Jan or I have mentioned or spoken about, then just let us know in the comments, and we'll come back around and have a chat. So Jan, thank you so much. This has been really cool. A little bit longer than my normal chats, but I think it's been so helpful. So I really appreciate your time and you sharing your wisdom. You've really articulated yourself so well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Without you, I wouldn't be here. So appreciate it very much that you introduced me to human design and that we met. Thank you so much for the space.
Thank you. All right. So we'll sign off. Bye everyone for now.
Bye.